This is Flick.
This is Rudy.
And episode 69 of the LOTD pod is the ideal one for the band Led Zeppelin. Not only do we have a couple of birthdays in January for Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones both, but 1969 was the year that Led Zeppelin debuted with Led Zeppelin 1, and they also followed that up with Led Zeppelin 2 in October of 1969.
Yeah, not many bands put out two albums that powerful back to back in their career. Almost no bands do it in the same year. Led Zeppelin did it in 1969. They're older than 69 at this point. They're in their 70s, but we've got some birthdays. I think we have all the reason we need to talk Led Zeppelin. And in our defense, we've made it to episode 70 without having talked about it, given an episode to Led Zeppelin. So we are not just rehashing classic rock because it's easy to talk about. We waited a good long time. I think it was worth it.
Yeah, and this one will be for you if you are of the mindset that radio has burned Led Zeppelin songs into the ground. We'll be discussing our favorite non-radio Led Zeppelin songs.
No Stairway. It's next. Thank you, Richard Shirk. We are up to episode 69 here on the LOTD pod. This is a very important one. We made it almost 70 episodes without devoting an entire episode to Led Zeppelin Flick, but that changes today.
Yeah, and I don't even know how much we've mentioned Led Zeppelin ever, but recently Jimmy Page had his 77th birthday. John Paul Jones also a birthday around the same time. And I will take a look here quick and see what the number is on that. He's 75. So January 3rd, John Paul Jones turned 75. Jimmy Page turned 77 on the 9th. And so it is definitely time, I think, to talk about Led Zeppelin.
But you and I are both gentlemen of a certain age, and we grew up in the central time zone, okay? If you're a 50-year-old dude in 2021, which I am, and you grew up in the central time zone in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you have basically been weaned on Led Zeppelin. I think you're pretty much issued it the second you step foot in this time zone that you're going to just have a life immersed in Led Zeppelin. And
so you really think that's a Midwestern specific thing?
I'd say Central Time Zone. I want to be generous because they have they have appeal, not just a Midwestern thing, but I do think that the radio waves of the Midwest are sort of the bitter clingers on the Led Zeppelin catalog. And I speak as somebody who was a music director of a classic rock station in Iowa, and I also was the host of the Get the Let Out program. And I will admit, by the time we were done, we played every song in the catalog, and I've heard all of it many, 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 many times. I did burn out on it. I did basically need 20 years off.
Yeah, with that in mind, I mean that's basically the purpose of our discussion today, because I think Led Zeppelin, yeah, you're right about the radio thing. There's a lot to that, like on one hand, I haven't really burned out on the songs, even the songs that were burned into the ground by the radio. At the same time, I realize looking back that the reason why Led Zeppelin 3 and Physical Graffiti and Houses of the Holy are the three Led Zeppelin albums I would say I've listened to the most in my life. And part of that is because they're great, but a big part of that is also because those are the least burned into the ground by the radio. Those are the albums where the radio has kind of not leaned on them like they lean on Led Zeppelin 4 or Led Zeppelin 2 or whatever.
Yeah, there's definitely some preference, but I think even within certain albums, like on Presence, they basically lean into Nobody's Fault But Mine for like 90% of the time. If something from Presence is played, it's Nobody's Fault But Mine. Nobody needs a podcast to discuss the merits of Nobody's Fault But Mine on Presence, because anybody who's spun the album even once understands that it's the anchor of the album. Now we can debate on whether it's the only great thing on the album. I would say many people say there's other stuff on there that's great, but it's still not a great album, right?
It's not a great album, and but it certainly has one of their best moments, and we'll discuss that as we go along. But yeah, I mean, we're the point of our topic here today is to really get to what those songs are that haven't been ruined by the radio. I mean, yeah, I mean, whether you're burned out, like I said, I haven't really burned out because I still like those songs a lot. I am affected by all of that radio play though, regardless. Like I'm not going to sit down and listen to Black Dog as often as I'm going to listen to some other stuff because Black Dog was played on the radio too much.
All right. Well, I think the only way to be fair here is we should go album by album. I don't know if this is necessarily even a draft. I think though we do. There's a little bit of having to play it by ear here, because there are some songs, and this is a testament to Led Zeppelin, which is there are certain songs by them that were not particularly loved when they were a band. They aren't, they weren't all over the place like they are now. There are certain songs that have gotten like a reassessment that are big on the radio now and were not big on the radio in the past. So little gray area there, and I'm willing to fight you for them.
Yeah, and well, I think we'll get to an example of what you're talking about in just a moment, because we're ready to start with Led Zeppelin 1, correct?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so Good Times, Bad Times. I've always liked that one a lot, and I again, radio play does play a part in it, and I remember a lot of this is my memory from the '90s, because at a certain point I really wasn't listening to radio hardly at all anymore, and these days I don't really listen to radio, period. But yeah, just looking back to the '90s, I don't remember anybody ever playing Good Times, Bad Times on the radio. But I think it does get radio play now, so it really doesn't qualify for the list. I think that would be a good candidate for me because if it wasn't for the fact I think things are changed now. I think now that is a very prominent Led Zeppelin song, whereas before I think that was kind of a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, I do think I agree with you, and I would say I can't call it my favorite song on Led Zeppelin 1, but I don't think there's ever a time I've skipped past it. You know what I mean? Like it's always been on my favorites list for the record. Led Zeppelin 1. Now this is really me showing my age here, but Led Zeppelin 1 was almost never in even like CD jukeboxes. Like there was no people who were, if you saw a Led Zeppelin record in a jukebox, it would have been like Led Zeppelin 2 or Led Zeppelin 4. And so even like in bars and stuff like that, I don't remember hearing Good Times, Bad Times and stuff like that. Like it wasn't played on the radio. It really wasn't in bars. You really had to own the album and be a fan to go get it. So I'm gonna say I'm in favor of Good Times, Bad Times as being one of the, even if it's starting to get love now, it's still not burned out, like certainly not like Stairway.
Okay,
Nothing
well,
that bad.
I mean, I'll put it on my list if it's up for grabs. So you know I'll grab that one. I don't know that there's anything else that would really be a candidate from Led Zeppelin 1 for me, because I would say "Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You" is easily a radio song, and "Dazed and Confused" is a radio song.
Yeah.
"Your Time Is Gonna Come" I don't think is probably on the radio everywhere, but I remember that being on the radio in Minneapolis. And then at that point you have like communication breakdown.
Communication breakdown is the reason that I think a lot of people know that is there is footage of them playing it at the time, like on Dutch TV or something. So that scratchy black and white footage of them playing is like one of the very few contemporaneous live performances that are still around from them on there. And so I think I've heard that a lot just from that live performance, and they were bringing it. It is a great song. It does belong on the radio. It absolutely belongs on the radio.
Well, okay. So, do you have anything on your list from Led Zeppelin one?
I'd take Good Times, Bad Times probably if I was going to pick, if I had to pick one.
Okay, so yeah, I'm in agreement. Although I have a suspicion that that now is a radio song, but
Well, we're going to figure it out.
yeah.
Like I said, I'll fight you for it. Does that mean we're ready to go to Led Zeppelin 2 already? Because this is where the meat is, isn't it? This is where this is where the secrets start coming out.
Well, maybe. Yeah, Led Zeppelin too. I mean, what really isn't on the radio? Moby Dick. Moby Dick isn't really going to make my list, but
Are you
that's not.
serious? Not even the live version?
No, and I love John Bonham, but no, Moby Dick isn't going to make my list. It's not a good enough song.
Whoa, whoa. And Bring It On Home?
Bring It On Home is them, just basically doing a faithful cop of Delta blues, and I don't really think that, you know, that's not really what you're going to Led Zeppelin for. You're not looking for like a faithful duplication of something.
Well, I'm I think this, even though this is maybe this is a paradox, or maybe I just don't know what the word paradox means. But ironically enough, maybe I don't know what the word ironic means. The There is some heat here. There is some beef on Led Zeppelin 2 because we've talked about compilations. I won't start that conversation over again. But the Led Zeppelin box set that came out was a 4-disc box set. It captured, I'd say, 2/3 of their collection made its way onto this first Led Zeppelin box set with the crop circles on it, and
Well,
they're fantastic. However,
yeah.
they did leave off Living Loving Maid, and it was not connected to Heartbreaker in the way they did it. So Living Loving Maid is not on the box set. It's only on the part 2 box set.
Right.
But radio has this right, Flick. They should be played together at all times and never separated from here to eternity.
Yeah, so the band hated Living Loving Maid. I don't think if they ever uh, did it live at all, they did it live once and once only. They hated Living Loving Maid.
Why? The riff is great. The lyrics are crap, but the riff is great. The performance is great too.
I don't really know the details on the why. I just know they hated it.
So wait, does it qualify or not? Because if this is a, I guess you have to make a case that it's in some ways it's the quintessential radio song because it's the only place that ever got played apparently.
Yeah, it is a radio song. I don't I know of multiple stations where you would hear that backed or Heartbreaker backed with Living Loving Maid. So I
All right,
think it
well,
was
I'm
probably
taking Moby Dick. I'm taking the fact that you would leave Moby Dick off. Sad, very sad. Sad if true.
I feel like I'm in the majority on that one.
What? All right. Look, it's a matter of opinion. One can't be wrong. One can't be right. The next one's going to be very tough.
Yeah.
This is really
Well,
tough.
so in contrast to Led Zeppelin 2, Led Zeppelin 3 is one where I think almost everything's on the table because I don't know. Immigrant Song is a radio song, sure.
Yeah.
What else is though? I don't. Gallows Pole. I guess I've heard that on the radio.
Gallows Pole only got popular because of the Page Plant like acoustic, the Unleaded album. That was
No, I
the
remember.
single, and that got beat to death.
I remember hearing it on the radio before that, and I would say it's the opposite. I would say that they might have done it on the Page Plant album because of radio play. But Friends, I would say is definitely not. Celebration Day. Like I would go with. I have 4 here off of this album.
Like, I'm gonna take That's the Way because that's the thing I think I would be most fiercely fighting on. But everything else, I think I'd concede.
Well, I'm not going to give up. That's the Way so easily. I mean, we can both have it. It's like you said. It's not. This is not a draft, but that's the Way I think is. Shame on the radio for not getting that one right, but good for us, I guess. Yeah, Tangerine. I don't know. Tangerine, is that a radio song?
We did play it so the way to get the let out was done when I worked in it is we bought a package of software that sort of gave us a rotation. So we could play any of them, but some of them would only get played like once a year. Like the version of Dazed and Confused from the Song Remains the Same soundtrack. Like, I would have had to had a intestinal issues to program that one. It would never be played. But Tangerine did get played and did get a lot of requests. So did Friends. I will say I don't think I ever received one request for Hats Off to Roy Harper, and I want to congratulate to everybody in Eastern Iowa for that.
Okay, so I definitely, I don't think I've ever heard Friends on the radio, but I think I've probably heard Tangerine on the radio.
Yeah,
So
I'll
I'm
say Tangerine, sure.
Tangerine on is a radio song or not a
Yeah,
radio?
and I'd say Gallows Pole will call a radio song, but everything else is
Okay.
pretty much fair game.
All right, so I'm gonna take Friends, Celebration Day, and That's the Way from Led Zeppelin 3. Um,
Since I've been loving you, uh, that might be a radio song too, but you didn't pick it,
yeah,
so I guess it doesn't matter.
yeah, I didn't take it. I think that probably is a radio song.
Yeah.
But yeah, Celebration Day and That's the Way. Both of those are two of my all-time favorite Zeppelin songs. And neither of them I would say are radio songs. So I'm definitely got to grab those. And then Friends is pretty close.
Well, we debated this a little bit before the show, but I do. It may not be eligible, but you got to give a shout out to "Hey Hey What Can I Do?" because it's another one of those songs which, in the '70s, most people would have only been able to hear on the radio. Like it would be the only place you would have heard it because almost no one had the original 7-inch single of "Immigrant Song."
I remember before the box set came out, the cassette single of Immigrant Song backed with Hey Hey What I had that because that was like the only place you could get it until the box set.
Yeah, I don't know if they had any other non-album B-sides. I think that they weren't sitting, as their reissues can attest, they weren't sitting on a bunch of extra material ready to go. The fact that song didn't make the record is, I think, proof that at some point an adult has to go in the room and tell them, knock it off, you're putting that song on the record, because it's better than half of Led Zeppelin 3. And that's not a hot take, I don't think.
Well, it depends on which half you're talking. It's not better than any of the songs I put on my list, I'll say.
Yeah, it's better than Out on the Tiles. It's better than Hats Off to Roy Harper. It's better. Yeah, it would be in the upper half of my Led Zeppelin 3 mix. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's better than the songs you just mentioned. I will agree.
And they had Jennings Farms Blues, which I don't know the story of, but on the reissue, it's one of the very few like net new ideas that are on these the last round of Led Zeppelin reissues. Jennings Farms Blues is from that era. That's great. I wish they hadn't tossed that in the trash. They certainly put out worse songs than that after that was written. Definitely.
All right, ready to move on to Led Zeppelin 4.
Yeah, boy, this is going to be golly. How's this going to go?
Yeah, I think there's probably two songs that would fit onto a non-radio list. It's Battle of Evermore and Four Sticks. And Battle of Evermore, I would have to debate this. I think it's good enough to make the list, almost, I think. But
yeah,
I'm
I
not
never
sure.
listened to it. I just never listened to it. I listen to Four Sticks more than I listen to Battle of Evermore, and I don't listen to Four Sticks. So
Yeah, it's one of those that I think I'm going to leave it off, but it is worth mentioning. It is definitely a good enough song to be on the radio, and it's maybe the only song that features an outsider, a guest appearance, which is Sandy Denny from the Fairport Convention. So it's notable, certainly, but yeah, I guess it's not going to make my list because I know I'm going to be filled to capacity here.
yeah, I have to be honest. I don't think I'm ever going to find my way back to enjoying Stairway to Heaven. I'm sort of already at the place where, for many reasons, I don't think I will ever listen to that song again in my life. I do not believe I will ever listen to Stairway to Heaven from beginning to end ever again, and I'm at peace. I am 100% at peace.
Well, by contrast, I think there was a time in my life where I might have felt the same, but I definitely don't feel that way now. I could easily listen to it now. Like that is the radio effect, though. I think the radio makes a lot of these songs hard to go to, and for a while maybe impossible to go to for me. But at this point, there isn't really anything that I feel radio has ruined. And Stairway to Heaven is something that I do like to go back to every now and then.
Yeah, make sure not to invite me next time you do.
And certainly, When the Levee Breaks is so great that it doesn't matter how many times you hear it. I don't think it loses anything. Like When the Levee Breaks is so great that I don't know. I don't want to put this to the test and listen to it like every day for a year or something like that. But it is so great that I feel like you could.
Well, I'll go this far with you. At this point, I prefer side two. I prefer side two of Led Zeppelin 4. I love Black Dog and Rock and Roll, but they're not enough to carry the day.
Side two is great. You have Misty Mountain Hop. You have Going to California. You have When the Levee Breaks.
Yeah, that's about 15 minutes of the highest quality music made in 1971.
Misty Mountain Hop at one time was a very underplayed, underappreciated song, but the radio got a hold of it eventually.
Yeah, I didn't get one of these, and I'm sure we could find a way to get one. But one of the radio stations of your youth and my youth used to do a top like 900 songs of all time in rock and roll every year. I don't know if Misty Mountain Hop made that list. I will have to find one. I mean, Stairway was always number one. Freebird was always number two. I think Born to Run was always number three, and then like Baba O'Reilly and Hey Jude or whatever, or Hey Jude would have been above Baba O'Reilly. But I don't think that top 10 ever changed in 20 years. It's probably the same today. There are, I think didn't Rolling Stone say Stairway's the greatest rock song of all time? Boy, are they full of crap if they did. Wow. It's not even close. Anyway, I will stop my anti-Stairway rantings. It's not their fault. They just recorded it. They didn't make it what it was.
All right, so House of the Holy, there's some gray area to me. I know that Over the Hills Far and Far Away and Dancing Days and Jamaica are all definitely radio songs. I'm not sure what else would be.
Over the Hills and Far Away, the best song on the album, you mean?
It's not, but it's definitely a radio song.
So the only gray area for me here is The Ocean a radio song or not, because I would vote it's not a radio song, and it's fantastic.
It is fantastic. I think it might be a radio song.
Yeah, and I know Dancing Days is radio, Jamaica's a radio. I mean, The Crunge is their worst song, right? We all agree on that.
Worst is tough, but it's not. It's the worst. It's the worst song in this album, I'll say for sure.
Yeah.
But the song remains the same. Would definitely make my list, and the Rain song, which is the correct answer for the best song on the album, is also on my list.
I would say the fact that the song remains the same is even eligible to be on the list is a damning testimony at what a weak load of weak sauce it is, and that it basically is a great idea for a riff, like shackled to the corpse of an idea for a song that's nowhere near as good, and basically it's not a radio song because it half sucks. How about that?
That's unbelievably wrong. That's couldn't be crazier to me. Song remains the same as great. I mean, there isn't any part of it that I don't like, but then there are so many different parts to it too. It is, it's like one of their most iconoclastic songs. Really, it just doesn't fit any mold that you can, it doesn't.
Like the first 20 seconds are breathtaking. Like it's among the best stuff they've ever done. It's the best first 20 seconds of any of their albums too, and that's saying something. But boy,
yeah, but it has sections. I mean, do you want it to just be that one section all the way through?
I could live with just Over the Hills and the Ocean and move on. I'm just telling you, that's just my reality here.
Yeah, the song remains the same is great, and the Rain song is one of it to me. It's the best Led Zeppelin song. It's my favorite Led Zeppelin song.
It is
Uh,
a great song. It would have been a greater song as a shorter song, but it is great. Yeah.
I don't agree that it should be shorter, but yeah, it is great. Yeah, so song remains the same, and the Rain song are definitely on my list. Uh, I think the Ocean is also a radio song. So
So there's
not
not much really.
what's that?
There's really not much here. I mean, what
Well,
the
most of
radio
them
got
are.
it right.
Yeah, the radio got it right, except for the first two songs. The radio got it right as more than they did on Led Zeppelin 3, for sure.
True. Although after Led Zeppelin 4, I would think radio could say they would do no wrong, but I don't know what I was there. I mean, there would only have been the one single from Houses of be Over the Hills and Far Away, right? Or I guess is Jamaica that was a single too. So there were two singles from it. That's not too bad, I guess. The
Yeah, I
Ocean was
guess
not a
I don't
single.
even know. I don't
Or
even know
not
what
even
this
a,
is.
yeah. Lots of requests when I was doing slinging when I was slinging Led Zeppelin for minimum wage. I
When you're
did
spit
get
platters.
that's right. I did spin platters, and I did get lots of requests for the Ocean. The Ocean, I think, has probably always been a down low all time favorite. And
Yeah,
it's
the
not.
Ocean is great. Third best song on the album.
Sigh.
And now we have the double album Physical Graffiti,
Right.
which
They're most overrated for sure.
yeah, I don't agree with that, but House of the Holy definitely a radio song. Trampled Underfoot, radio song. Kashmir. Side two of album one is pure radio bliss.
Yep.
Let's see. Outside of that, was a Rover Custard Pie. I think are probably also radio songs.
Custard Pie for sure. Wanton Song, I think you could make a case. Uh, Wanton Song was not super common on the radio, but enough that it's a jam. I always couldn't wait for that one. So if it's not on the list, I'm taking it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm out of touch. I'm not sure if it's a radio song or not. Uh,
I mean,
my Go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, no, you go ahead.
My picks are all going to be from album two. I love album two.
In the Light is great, and I think you have to have Bron-Yr-Aur and Down by the Seaside together, even on a mix. They have to stay together. They're perfect, leading right into each other. Night Flight's tolerable. Wanton Song's great. Boogie with Stew's tolerable. Sick Again's better than tolerable. Yeah, I think I might go with you on that.
Yeah, I think in the light and I think you're right. Bron-Yr-Aur and Down by the Seaside do kind of belong together. And then yeah, it's 10 years gone. Is that radio?
I got a lot of requests for it. I mean, I don't care for it.
I love it, but I think it's probably a radio song. And yeah, then I think I'll also take Night Flight.
Yeah, I like Night Flight. Isn't Night Flight one of the leftovers from other sessions?
A lot of what's on Physical Graffiti would be leftovers from other sessions. A lot of it is leftover from Led Zeppelin 4. I think Led Zeppelin 4 is most of Led Zeppelin 4 and House of the Holy are probably most of leftovers are most of what's on Physical Graffiti.
Yeah, I think it shows. I think Physical Graffiti is ragged in and not in the good way. Like the Beatles' White Album is ragged in the good way. This is a little more rough.
Actually, Wikipedia does a good job of summarizing that. Actually,
Is that so?
so the Rover and Houses of the Holy are Houses of the Holy outtakes, and Bron-Yr-Aur is Led Zeppelin 3 outtake. Down by the Seaside is Led Zeppelin 4. Night Flight, Led Zeppelin 4. Boogie with Stew, Led Zeppelin 4. Black Country Woman, House of the Holy. So those are the outtakes that are on it.
Yeah, so Led Zeppelin 4's outtakes are superior to other albums' outtakes too. So, boy, I guess I have to say you have to leave Four Sticks on there, and you probably do have to leave Battle of Evermore on there. I gotta say, as much as I don't like Battle of Evermore and Four Sticks, you gotta leave Led Zeppelin 4 the way it is, and certainly Physical Graffiti needs the help. I know you don't think that. I'm just saying it's metaphysically certain that.
Yeah, I don't see the flaws in Physical Graffiti so much. I'm not saying it's a perfect double album, but I wouldn't take anything off of the second album. So, being how there are good things on the first album, it has to be a double album. There's just no getting around that to me. Uh, but yeah, I mean, you can't put Boogie with Stu on Led Zeppelin 4. It isn't going to sound right.
Which
And
isn't to say that Four Sticks does sound right.
right, yeah, point taken. And I don't think you can put Black Country Woman on House of the Holy and think that that's going to sound right either. So,
Well, we all can concede, and by all I mean you and I, that it is their best record cover by a country mile.
yeah, they have good album covers. They aren't lacking in that territory.
Their record covers are overrated, but I do. I'm just looking for an excuse to say that when I moved from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to New York City, I moved to the block that the Physical Graffiti house is on, and I had to walk by it every day on the way to my stupid job. So having to look at it every day increased my love for it. Did not make it diminish. What you may not know is that block of St. Mark's. If you go up to the corner there at St. Mark's and First Avenue, that was where Ron Wood's bar was, where they recorded the "Waiting on a Friend" video too. So it was a hot block there in at the end of old St. Mark's between First and A. Hot block.
And you could have stashed your trash by you could have checked your stash by the trash at St. Mark's Place.
Only Alex Chilton gets to do that. But we did have the Continental, Coney Island High. There were a couple. The Exploding Plastic Inevitable, I think, was on St. Mark's between second and third. One of the early Warhol spaces was there, so that was a hopping block at one time. I think the Fillmore East was over there too. Veselka, I saw Joey Ramone at Veselka when I lived there. I mean, again, I lived there, but I was a tourist. I was literally as fresh off the turnip truck as you could be. And then you go and you sit down for a raspberry blintz, and there's Joey Ramone enjoying a raspberry blintz. So fantastic block. I'm just looking for an excuse to talk about how much I love New York in the '90s. Sorry, I'll get over it. I'll let it go because we really do. Yeah, go.
I don't want to sidebar this too far, but I think of Joey Ramone all the time now because maybe I don't want to go into this at all.
It's your call. Look, I feel you like see pictures of him, and then when you see him in person, he's gigantic. He's tall. He's like Manute Bol tall.
Now the sad thing I think about every now and then is that Joey Ramone in his later days wrote a song about Maria Bartiromo, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
I don't want to sidebar that too far, but it's a shame.
But all is forgiven. All is forgiven.
Oh yeah, I'm not blaming Joey Ramone for it. I'm blaming her for it. She's the subject of a Joey Ramone song. She should have lived up to that.
Well, I believe in miracles. She may yet one day. All right, so
there's always time. There's always time to repent.
Speaking of 1976, dang, still got it, son. Sorry. 1976 in the life of Led Zeppelin is really, I think, the bane of every cutout bin at every Tower Records in Christendom for 25 years, and that would be Presence.
You and the cutout bin, you're really obsessed with this thing. And no matter how many people try to convince you, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, so now the truth comes out as to why Presence is the worst Led Zeppelin album. I'm not gonna tell you it isn't, but it does contain one of their best moments. So this is one of those paradoxes, I guess you would say. Achilles' Last Stand is one of the all-time Led Zeppelin songs. It is the best, I think, to feature the vicious potential of them as a band. Um, yeah, that being said, the rest of the album doesn't live up to it, but Achilles' Last Stand alone is enough, I think, to redeem it.
This is the one Led Zeppelin album you can't put on if you've brought like if you have a party with females at it. Like this is the Led Zeppelin album you can't put on when the chicks are over. And what kind of Led Zeppelin album is that? What good is that?
Okay, well, I don't know that that's any Led Zeppelin album unless you're following Damone's advice from Faster Ridgemont High.
Damone's advice has made it into farther corners of the world than ours. You need to be more respectful.
I don't know that it's well, yeah, I mean there are certainly females that like Led Zeppelin music. I'm not saying that, but I don't think it would be ever the ideal music for such a setting.
Oh, I think you could say that about Presence. Like Achilles' Last Stand, like you can't put that you don't put that on to get the party started. If you put the Wanton song on to get the party started, you got a shot. You know? You
Yeah.
got, I mean, they played Stairway to Heaven at my high school dances. You know how hard it is to like slow dance to hear? It's not, you know what I mean? It's like it's even difficult to slow dance to, and then it gets fast. It's I don't know. You got to be careful with the catalog. You got to be really careful, and by be real careful, I mean never play Presence in that situation. Just don't.
Well, let's talk less about Presence. Let's talk more about Achilles' Last Stand, because to me that's really the takeaway here. Maybe like Nobody's Fault But Mine. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's all right.
There are other songs here that you might like. Achilles' Last Stand, though, is to me essential. It it might be the only thing from Presence that I would say is essential, but it's certainly essential.
I mean, New Orleans? There's a little dark energy there that I'm not a
Royal
huge
Orleans.
fan of. Yeah, but New Orleans is one of the most fun places in the world, and Roy Orleans is not one of the most fun songs by by Led Zeppelin. I mean, like it's lifeless to me. It doesn't. The whole album is product. It's just
Okay,
generic
but
product.
no. Okay, so you're saying Achilles' Last Stand is generic product.
Yeah, I do think it's sort of it's going the same place as Song Remains the Same in terms of just that high tempo, super tight pocket thing they do. And it's not a particularly bold thing for them to lead with a record that sounds like that because Song Remains the Same already did it and did it with a better riff. Not that either are great, although I'm not being flippant. I do understand why you like it because there is that whole like the whole fantasy elven weird mythology part of Led Zeppelin that people really like these days, and Achilles' Last Stand is a big slice of it. So certainly, just because
Well,
don't enjoy it doesn't mean others don't.
I would say it has zero to do with the subject matter. It's totally about the music. It's 100%. It's it's arguably the most powerful Led Zeppelin song there is.
I Yeah, and I would say for a band this far into their career that is as productive as their career was, there is no shame in saying that by 1976 they were pretty much out of ideas. And that's because by 1976 they were pretty much out of ideas. Achilles' Last Stand is the one case you could make that they weren't out of ideas. But even then
Well,
it's not
okay.
terribly original.
So to go to the history on that, you're not wrong because Jimmy Page was like I would say in the depths of his heroin use at that point. So he was like at a point where the ideas were limited. And I think you're right. This this is the glimmer of light in a good amount of darkness. But it is a good takeaway though from that. Like it isn't just a little glimmer of something. It's a big one. It's huge. uh I Yeah, again, I'm not in total disagreement about where Presence is. It's a low point as an album, but Achilles' Last Stand is, I think, also a high point as a song. It's a paradox.
If you're gonna sell your soul, you better get better back than Candy Store Rock. That's a warning to you all. You shouldn't be selling
Well,
your soul to begin with.
you want to focus on what's not good about the album. I want to focus on the best song on the album instead of spending all our time talking about the ones that aren't good.
Well,
Which,
I'm only doing that because I'm not just doing hot takes for the fun of it. I'm doing the hot takes because we're about to come to the greatest hot take that I think I have.
okay, well, if you're talking about moving on to the next album,
Yes, I am.
in case it wasn't clear, Achilles' Last Stand makes my list because that's a 10-minute song. That's not a radio song by any means.
Mm, all right. You get it. That's fine.
You're saying it's a radio song? It's 10 and a half minutes long.
I can't speak for all radio programming software, but if they have a Get the Let Out show and they go to Presence, it's 90% of the time going to be Nobody's Fault But Mine, and then Achilles Let's Stand is probably the majority of the rest of the time songs that get played.
Well,
Almost nothing gets played.
that would be less than 10% then. So,
Yeah, but and for an album that gets a giant zero. Um, the
oh, not a zero.
I don't think that even during concerts for Presence, I don't think anybody screamed out Achilles' Last Stand, did they? I can't think I've ever heard it in the booth.
It was already in the set list.
Oh, that's true. Well, they certainly weren't singing. Well, maybe they would have cried out for Nobody's Fault But Mine. Give their ears a break. All right, we're up to the end of the Led Zeppelin studio albums as Led Zeppelin intended them. This is the last album product, which they were the auteurs of from beginning to end, and that is In Through the Outdoor. And I'm just going to give my hot take here, which is, while there are everything here is good. Everything on this record is good. So it's just a question of what wasn't on the radio for me, which is I'm Gonna Crawl, Carousel Alhambra, Hot Dog, and Southbound Suarez.
Yeah, and the fact that you like In Through the Outdoor, we've talked about it a little bit before actually. John Paul Jones had a lot more to do with this album than Jimmy Page really did, and it's because of what we're talking about with Jimmy Page. He was hitting his lows, and so John Paul Jones really was taking the helm on a lot of this, a lot of the arrangement. He played his part in other stuff too. So there's a lot of stuff that John Paul Jones did on the other albums you might not have been aware of, but he really was in the driver's seat for this one.
I agree, and that's a matter of fact. Like, that's settled science, and I can't debate it. But I want to hot take this again, just in the sense that people are sleeping on how great a John Bonham album this is, and everybody knows that, like, "Fool in the Rain" is one of his, like, just incredible beats. It's like a little shuffle that he does that is it sounds so simple, and then if you sit down at a drum set and try to play it, you're like, oh yeah, I can't do that. Like, there are moments in the evening, for an album that is as centered and loud and big sounding and literally brassy. I think that's they use the brass setting on every keyboard thing on here. It's as big and brassy as this album is it can't stand up to the heavy hand of John Bonham. Even like In the Evening, with everything going on in that song, the drums are still the lead instrument. You know what I mean? That's one of the things that this comes out about this album is that, and maybe it's a John Paul Jones thing because he's in the rhythm section and probably was as big a fan of John Bonham as anybody. You know what I mean? He certainly worked most closely with him. But like, John Bonham plays lead drums on this album almost from beginning to end, and he doesn't do anything that isn't amazing in my amateur estimation. So I'm giving big ups to the album because I do like John Paul Jones' voice for the band. I do like how he made them sound. It did give them a template they could use to make more interesting records had they stayed together. But people are sleeping on how great the John Bonham performances are here. They're great.
Well, they're always great. I mean, and that's why I can't understand why you don't have more appreciation for Achilles' Last Stand, because what Bonham did on that is amazing. But John Bonham was always amazing. I think the question about In Through the Outdoor, though, what songs aren't really radio songs, because it is, kind of what you're getting at. It's a very radio friendly album, and I don't know. Southbound Suarez, I think, is not a radio song, right?
Yeah, Carousel Alhambra's not. And I'm Gonna Crawl. We used to get calls for it every once in a while. I love I'm Gonna Crawl. It's probably in my top five, like to the spirit of our show where we started, which is like think of all the times you've listened to Led Zeppelin, sometimes by choice, sometimes not. Like no band's catalog can withstand that amount of punishment unless they're elite, which they
Yeah.
are. And I come back to like, well, what are the things that I can go to and I still want to hear it? It still sounds great in my ear. I'm not worn out in every aspect of it. I'm Gonna Crawl is up there for me. They do ballads elsewhere, but its arrangement is different, and I believe them. Like yes, it's a pop album, but I believe them. You know what I mean? Like I think they mean it. I think their heart's in it, and I think Presence was like them sort of being out of ideas, and I think they would have been looking at this album as like, well, they've started new life. Like there's another. There could have been a Led Zeppelin of the '80s that I think could have gone from this spot and still been interesting, and it's sad. It's for a lot of reasons it didn't.
Yeah, it is. It's a. I mean, all Led Zeppelin albums are adventurous. Like they were always going places. Um, I would say though, there's not one with more variety for sure than In Through the Outdoor. And no matter what they do, like I find myself liking it. A song like Hot Dog, which was maybe just a goof. I'm not sure what the real intention was behind it, but it's enjoyable. And Southbound Suarez, I'm going to put on my list because I don't think that was a radio song, and that's enjoyable. And it doesn't really sound like any other Led Zeppelin song.
You got to put Hot Dog in there to lay off the keyboards. Like they can't have the string section settings on every keyboard thing. They have it's a great piano song. It's organic, and in an album that sounds synthetic, there are these slices that are really organic. That's one of them, and the other, of course, is every time the God of Thunder lays the heavy hand down. He's all human, so there's definitely like the organic heartbeat of it. The piano's great there for that. So interesting. So we didn't talk about any rules for Coda in advance because I think you could make a case that almost everything on Coda is not a radio song, but the Coda reissue from a couple of years ago does have "Hey Hey What Can I Do" on it, and does have "Traveling Riverside Blues," which by definition is a radio song because it's a BBC session. But can we acknowledge that Coda is at least a peer of Presence and probably should be discussed?
Well, Coda's an odds and ends collection, so I'm not going to put it head to head with any of the albums. It doesn't really make sense to do that. Um, it doesn't mean okay. So hey hey, what can I do? Isn't qualified. It's definitely a radio song. And Traveling Riverside Blues was also a radio song because they even made a video for that when the box set came out. So other than that, I don't think there is anything that's a radio song that's on Coda, but those two would be radio songs.
Yeah, poor Tom. I might make a case as in the over-programmed era of radio where you just have a couple companies who own everything sending the playlist down the pipe, which is how it was when I was doing it. We were told to play Poor Tom on occasion, and I got calls for it. I love Poor Tom. I think it's better than some of the stuff that it did end up getting released. Kind of sad it didn't for a while.
Yeah, but Poor Tom was a Led Zeppelin 3 song, so Led Zeppelin 3 didn't need too much help.
Oh yes, they could. Hats off to Roy Harper. Should be on Coda.
Well, yeah, I mean there might have been one or two slots for it, but it isn't a bad album though.
And how do you feel about Bonzo's Montreux?
Yeah, I wouldn't go that direction. Poor Tom could make my list as long as that's not a radio song. I would say Darlene and Ozone Baby, which nobody seems to like it, but I like Ozone Baby a lot. And Wearing and Tearing, I think, is also really good.
Isn't Ozone Baby a Led Zeppelin 4 orphan? Or is
I
that
don't
Darlene?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think actually a lot of what's on Coda was outtakes from In Through the Outdoor.
All right, so the only question really I have left is, did you own the Honey Drippers EP?
When it was new, no, but in later years, I was more of a completist, and you know, the CD for that wasn't too expensive when I bought it, so I didn't invest a lot of money in it. But yeah, I had it.
I bought the 7-inch of Sea of Love, and I'm not ashamed. It was good. And Robert Plant had some decent solo stuff.
Yeah,
Not, I mean, I think he'd make a good 10-song list of his stuff, and it'd be all quality.
yeah. I don't think of Robert Plant as a lightweight in any regard, but he's also not. He didn't have a great solo career, but he had a respectable solo career, I think for sure.
He had the best of them by far. Did you ever buy like the Firm's second record, or did
Well,
anybody? I guess.
that was the one that didn't have radioactive on it.
Yeah, the one I think it's called Mean Business.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard it.
Yeah. How about the Death Wish 2 soundtrack? You a big fan?
No, I don't think I've ever heard it.
Yeah, I think that's Jimmy. That's a swan song release, by the way. A cutout bin special too, because it's Jimmy Page
You and the
doing
cutout
stuff.
bin, it's like
Do you really have no emotional attachment to the cutout bin?
well, okay, it's apparent from our discussion that we feel differently about how record executives view things. So, while the cutout bin should have a lot of junk in it, it should and does because, naturally it's going to. It doesn't mean that everything is that's in the cutout bin is junk.
I agree, but I think the difference here is like for a band like XTC, I think you like a band like XTC, and there are certain fans who will buy their albums no matter what. And then there are fans like me who I was not going to buy Oranges and Lemons or those sorts of things until I saw them for $3.99 at Best Buy, and that's your intro in. You know what I mean?
But
Like they're just
if you find an album like Oranges and Lemons in the cutout bin, then you've won. You should be happy about that.
yeah, I agree. That's why I consider the cutout bin one of the holy of holies in the record nerd's life.
Oh, but
It's
you always use it as a dig at somebody.
It is. It's almost always a dig at the record companies for like when they have big ideas of what albums are going to sell, and then they get it totally wrong and way overpress.
Yeah,
That's what Geffen Records did.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not always that they get it wrong, though. It's that sometimes they just don't have it. They might have they might have gone into it with the intention of promoting something, and then just drop it. Because that happens a lot of times. One of my favorite albums ever, "Lust for Life" by Iggy Pop. Uh, RCA completely cut promotion on that because Elvis died,
Right.
and so then there was zero promotion after that. Like it got off to a good start, and then Elvis dies, and then they completely stop promoting it. So you never know what's going to happen. I mean, basically, the cutout bins, mean that they had intentions going in of making the album big. Then they cut promotion for whatever reason.
Again, I do think your skill at the cutout bin is a way of determining whether how great a music fan you are. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying the cutout bin is like hell for albums, because there are a lot of innocent albums that get put there. You know what I'm saying? Like I have this is a shameful thing, and then I'll drop the topic because I'm really ashamed to admit this, but the Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique did not sell all that well at first. And the first EP that had like "Hey Ladies" and stuff on it, I think, was the Love American Style EP. They printed up so many cassette singles of the Love American Style EP that the Kmart on the west side or east side in Iowa City, like they had so many of them to cut up, and I used to use them as blank tapes to tape other albums because they were so cheap. I've got probably 15 mix CDs that are just made on the little shorty Love American Style because they were like a quarter in the cut
Yeah,
up and at the Kmart. Like
yeah.
it's
Paul's Boutique is a great example of how record labels can get it wrong. Like they don't, like they, obviously they were wanting a sequel to Fight for Your Right to Party. That was never going to happen.
right,
But that's what the record company would be looking for.
right. Staring at the radio, staying up all night. What could you do? All right. Well, I think we're just going to have to judge this one by the quality of our playlists. Again, I'll fight you. I'll put mine up there. I'll go toe to toe. I'll take the
Yeah,
challenge with your shit.
I'm not worried about it.
All right.
I'm good.
All right. Well, that means we're up to episode 70. I don't think we picked up a topic for episode 70, have we? It's
No.
not too late. We could make that. We could do a whole show on the music of 1970. We'd need it'd be like a 5-part show though. One of the greatest years of all time. Just lobbying. I don't know how it'll go. You'll let us
Yeah,
know.
we'll see.
All righty. So episode 70 next. We appreciate you. We will see you then.
See you then.